All right, so I need to clarify something. We don't need to use AI imagery at all for when you are advocating for humanitarian or for peace. You don't. Um, just remember that this has been for 8 months. There's been enough footage, videos, which we talked about. That this, most of us have shared those videos with the ICJ, have uploaded those. I know I have. Most of us have literally share 100 and something videos. Okay, authentic. Don't try to terrorize. Don't let the oppressor let you taint this humanitarian work. Okay, that is a form of white supremacy as well, to degrade those speaking the truth, right? Those that is trying to continue to oppress and do the atrocities and things that it's been trying to do for the past 8 months and 76 years, plus also in the Congo and the Sudan. We have to continue talking about that. I just saw a couple of videos that I'm going to add here that I don't believe it, and I don't think I feel disgusted that we have billionaires that can literally fix this in the Sudan, because they literally have 3 months. In the next 3 months, they are going to starve to death. And I don't think, and then seeing that 2 billionaires, I don't know, are investing millions to go see the fucking Titanic. Who gives a fuck about the fucking Titanic? That shit is a wreck. That for what? These people, you need something to do? Go help those in need. I don't understand. I don't understand. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, free all the oppressed. This is ridiculous.
Have you seen this image today?
It's not hard when 30.2 million people put it on their story today.
The irony of saying all eyes on Rafah while depicting a fake AI image of Rafah.
Are you getting deja vu from the Black Square in 2020? Sometimes we fall too easily into the hands of our oppressor and wash away our own words.
What are Zionists doing online right now? Well, several propaganda heads have decided to take a social media break.
Why? Because nothing they say right now can fool anyone anymore. They are recouping, and instead of us spreading knowledge in this time, we're spreading a fake AI image of Rafah.
Now, let's talk about doing the bare minimum. Posting this image is below bare minimum.
If it's taken you 8 months to realize this is a genocide, please use real imagery. Or if it's too graphic for you, share your words on what's really happening. You don't need an AI image when Palestinians are risking their blood to get us the pictures.
Countless journalists have been murdered by Israel. Why? It's because Israel doesn't want us to see what's happening. We have had real accounts and images for the past 8 months of this genocide, very well documented. And you're choosing AI?
And to help you understand what happened in Rafah, an attack happened on the night of May 26. Since then, more attacks have occurred. Israel dropped 7 2,000-pound bombs, as well as bombs on the displacement camp on May 26. On a, quote, designated safe zone, Israel attacked tents.
What has happened since? Israeli forces targeted another makeshift tent area in Rafah.
So while your eyes are on Rafah with an AI image, are they really? Because this attack happened. Judging from the story post, you guys don't know about it.
This post isn't to yell or reprimand any of you guys. It's to reassert that everyone at the very bare minimum should be saying who the doer is. Should be saying who the one massacring Palestinians is. Describe what is happening in Gaza with more than just an AI image, because Gaza and Rafah deserve more.
Please know that your voices and numbers have value. Please share what's really happening and don't go with the crowd of washing away the story.
Hi, you're gonna want to hear this.
Hello everyone, I'm here to deliver the worst news of my life. There has been a report talking about how by September it is estimated that 2.5 million people in Sudan are going to die due to hunger and malnutrition and sickness. And you can probably understand that we as the Sudanese people feel very helpless, as we cannot do anything to change the situation or the outcomes. However, it has been stated even in the report itself that the only way that we can tackle such an issue is through supporting local initiatives and community kitchens.
Now that you've heard from somebody on the ground and from the experts, I'm here to tell you how you can help. In the report that Omnia mentions, they say that this 2.5 million represents 15% of the population of Darfur and Kordofan, two of the areas they believe are the worst affected by this hunger crisis. This is where HRRDS comes in. They are a Sudanese organization working in South Kordofan, supporting some of the most vulnerable people, including raising funds to feed people across South Kordofan. You can make a one-time donation, you can make a monthly donation if you like, whichever you choose. If you want to help people in the Darfur area, you can donate to Sudan Solidarity Collective. They are supporting emergency response rooms and community kitchens in Darfur and across Sudan. This hunger crisis is affecting the entire country, and especially the conflict zones, which includes Khartoum. Khartoum is a capital city/state. It includes Khartoum, Bahri, and Omdurman. And Khartoum Aid Kitchen has been raising funds to support community kitchens across the state. I urge you all, particularly people who have been talking about, why isn't anybody talking about Sudan? Why isn't anybody doing anything about Sudan? To engage with this, to donate. And listen, times are tight, money is tough. Flip that over, you know what I'm talking about. If you cannot donate, then please absolutely share.
It's clear that Israel doesn't want to be among the nation of states. It's clear that Israel wants to be a rogue state.
No power on earth will stop Israel from protecting its citizens and going after Hamas in Gaza.
We don't have a system that's able to halt genocide. We have a system that should be able to halt genocide. And yet here we are with a country that's made it clear that it wants to carry out a genocide and no effective means to actually stop it.
Both colonialism and apartheid. There are those
The system of international law depends upon states behaving according to what the court asks them. And then it depends on other states backing the court up. And what does that mean? It means now that they should be imposing sanctions on Israel. It means now they should be boycotting Israel. It means that now there should be an arms embargo on Israel.
As a result, approximately 800,000 Palestinians were displaced from Rafah as at May 18, 2024.
Israel has done and has gone out of its way to try to suppress and kill off any evidence of its genocide. It's blocked journalists from entering into Gaza. It has systematically killed off journalists. This is the deadliest place in the world for journalists since the Second World War. It has blocked the entry of UN workers whose job has been to try to document what is happening on the ground. And most importantly, it has been killing Palestinians so that their testimony is no longer present.
I declare the sitting closed.
I'm happy that this ruling has come out because it affirms everybody's belief and knowledge that what Israel's doing is illegal, but it's definitely not enough. We're now at a crossroads where the world has to make a decision and treat Israel like the state that it should be treated as, which is a rogue pariah state, or whether it wants to continue to coddle Israel.
Media have chosen not to use the right language and create a sort of a cocoon for Israel not to be held accountable. A level of sanitization of the language when it comes to Israel that it's unprecedented. We are free to criticize the human rights records of the United States, of European countries. In the case of Israel, this is not possible. Because as soon as you do, there is this accusation of anti-Semitism. And the risk is that this continuous conflation of what Israel does with the entire Jewish population around the world threatens the Jews first and foremost. The point is our governments and what they do, because it's them having international obligations. They have amplified Israeli narrative. We have had the IDF spokesperson and other military personnel telling their version of the story. It's proved by various commission of inquiries on the occasion of wars that Israel often circulates misleading information and Israel lies. There has been a silencing of voices. Like you mentioned journalist Latouf in Australia. There's people smeared, vilified because of their stance on justice and human rights. But also the silencing, meaning not giving space to alternative voices, reducing their credibility. This has created a layer of confusion around who's entitled to speak, who are the authoritative voices.
Zionism is different from Judaism, and it is entirely wrong to conflate the two. Being against Zionism, which I regard as essentially a matter of ethnic cleansing and land theft, essentially. That is the purpose of Zionism, to take land that belonged to other people. Yes, Jews have been horribly traumatized and victimized, but that doesn't then allow one group to take land and displace another group. To look at the actions of the Israeli government, they are attempting to drive the occupants out of this land altogether. And that has been very much the policy of Israel well before it was a state. Since the Zionist movement began, Jews who lived together with Muslims and Christians in Palestine for centuries. And it was a peaceful place. It was only with the advent of the Zionists, who felt like this land belonged to them, that the violence came. And many Jews left, as well as Christians and Palestinians, with the entry of the Zionists. This is a very difficult topic for people of Jewish background to come to terms with. And I see this as someone who grew up in the 60s. I see this as remarkably similar to the very difficult wake up of the white community with the civil rights movement in the 1960s. This was a difficult conversation that involved confronting the many institutions of white supremacy and the very challenging conditions of racism that were endemic, in our schools, in housing, and so on. It's a hard conversation, but it has to be had, and it cannot be shut down. I think it's really important to have it, especially because our tax dollars are funding this war, which the American people vehemently protest.
I hear varying different viewpoints on the complexity of this issue and personal opinions to that regard, and I do wonder if politics considers each and every aspect of it. My suspicions is that it does not, but this conversation has been very thought-provoking for me today. Thank you for joining us.
It always blows my mind that whenever someone has a critique about America, or someone talks about how shitty our government is, or how divided this country is, without a doubt, there's always some dumb fuck that has to say, oh, if you don't like it, then you should leave. And go where, smartass? These are the same people, mind you, that would be like, America's the most powerful country in the world. So if America's the most powerful country in the world, what makes you think me moving outside of America is going to stop me from feeling its influence? We talking about the same country that arguably has more military bases outside of its own borders than any other country in the world. We talking about the same country that pretty much no matter where I move throughout the world, I have to pay taxes like I live here. The same country that we can argue that runs the United Nations, that has a history of destabilizing governments and assassinating political leaders who go against their own imperialistic agenda and ideology. Like me moving outside of America is magically going to solve all the fucking problems. I can guarantee you whenever someone says, oh, if you don't like it, then you should leave, 99.9% of the time, they're either racist, bigoted, homophobic, all of the above, or plus some.
They want to show they're on top. Soldiers and police of the Sudan Armed Forces in the center of Omdurman doing the sign of the falcon. We've seized our prey. The aim is to demonstrate to us that they're back in control and that the people are happy to see them. But such triumphalism is premature. They may have driven the Rapid Support Force militia out of this part of Omdurman in March, but their enemy still occupies Omdurman's twin city, the capital Khartoum, and much of the rest of Sudan. We drive through a city of ruins. Imagine the shopkeepers, the people who lived here, the lives destroyed by this futile war. Families rescue a few belongings from looters. Every 100 meters or so, new local recruits have erected another checkpoint. Everyone's nervous. General Abdel Fattah Burhan presides over devastation, over a country that's coming apart, the legitimacy of his leadership open to question. The last battle for this part of Omdurman was fought here in the middle of March. This area was absolutely littered with bodies. The Ministry of Health came and removed hundreds. But the RSF is still just about 4 kilometers up the road. The battle for the capital of Sudan is not over yet. Walls that remain intact hide the greatest horrors. This house was owned by a poet who fled to Saudi Arabia. The RSF took it over, but they didn't just trash the place as they did elsewhere, but turned it into a torture or maybe execution chamber. They dug a pit and placed a pulley on an iron bar on the ceiling to hoist people up and suspend them. Rumours of what happened here spread. After the RSF was driven out, the homeowners asked a neighbour to come and check.
فدخلت هنا ما قدرت يعني اتخلعت من المنظر الموجود ده يعني أنا وصلت هنا الباب ويعني كنت في حالة بتاعت صدمة كده دي شنو دي الحاصل شنو فبعد ذاك جيت أخبرت شباب الحلة قلت لهم والله يا أخي في حاجة حاصلة كده غريبة يعني في البيت ده يعني من منظر الحديد والحفرة وكده يعني حاجة صعبة.
We found a document listing names. 31-year-old Omar Ahmed Adam, a 30-year-old woman Manal Hassan, 12 names in total, all accused of great betrayal, in other words, not supporting the RSF. And amongst the debris, mementos of the happy family who once lived here, who can never in their worst imaginings have predicted what would happen in their home. So there were really big battles here, yeah?
Yes.
I walked a few yards round the corner with Rashid Ahmed, who stayed at home here in Old Omdurman for 4 months until the fighting became too intense. Outside his house we can smell death. The piles of earth are makeshift graves. RSF slogans have been graffitied on the walls.
This is my car.
Your car?
This is my car, yes.
It was your car?
It was, yes.
His house was badly damaged. A rocket hit after he left. But the cornicing with which his grandfather adorned the walls when he built the house in the 1940s remains.
We don't expect it to happen to us. This. All in our dreams we can't imagine this. Always we hear about wars again outside Khartoum and outside Omdurman, not in Omdurman, not in Khartoum. It's very bad. Very bad.
Do you think you will live here again?
Sure. Sure. It's my house. It's my home. We will build again, inshallah.
The children still play, even if they've fled their homes and are living in a school that doubles as a centre for the displaced. Their mothers, of course, can't forget what brought them here.
طبعا الدعامة جو علينا في بيوتنا طفوا علينا في البيوت وكانوا دايما يغتصبوا بناتنا ولا من بناتنا طفرناهم بالحيط بفوق وقتلوا بنت وولدين كانوا دايما يدافعوا عن البنات ديلا حالتنا يعني صعبة وطبعا الرجال ما لاقين شغل يشتغلوا ويعني ياهو.
In the absence of international aid, neighbourhood groups are pitching in. Do you think that the international community has let you down?
Yeah, unfortunately I think so. I think that People eyes now on Ukraine and Gaza, but we got not a lot of help here in Sudan. Basically, people need food and medicine, basically. Okay?
Food and medicine, as simple as that.
As simple as that.
Because in war, you see the best as well as the worst of humankind. The best being people like Dr. Mohammed Banaga, who started a soup kitchen for displaced people, funded by local shops and friends in the Sudanese diaspora. And you stayed here throughout the war. Were you not afraid?
No, I'm not afraid. Afraid of what?
Afraid of being killed?
Man will die once, no? Not twice, once.
This family just escaped Wad Madani to the southeast of Omdurman, where the RSF recently seized control. All over Sudan, people are going hungry because they've lost everything. The economy has collapsed, and armed men frequently steal what little aid is available.
الوضع سيء جدا، يقتلوا المواطنين، يشيلوا حقهم وينهبون زي دي ويطردون من بيوتهم، وشالوا ثمارهم وحياتهم كلها، موادنا المحاصيل كله شالوا برا.
Ruin upon ruin, rout on rout. Not a paradise lost, but a country. Neighbouring powers are fueling this war. The United Arab Emirates arming the RSF, Iran and Egypt backing the Sudan armed forces. If the parties aren't forced to negotiate, what will be left of Sudan? Nothing that can be reassembled, but a failed state in a forever war, its people dispersed and destitute.
Hi, I'm Diggity. Let's do a little Did You Know? Did you know that WCNSF means Wounded Child No Surviving Family? Did you know that it's an acronym that's specifically born out of Gaza? Did you know that? Did you know that kids as young as 5 are having suicidal ideations? Because they've lost their entire families? Did you know that? Did you know that there was a 6-year-old boy who was found sleeping under some trucks, and when they found him and asked him why he was sleeping under the trucks, he said, "I'm hoping that they won't see me so they'll run me over, because I just want to be with my family"? Did you know that? Did you know that the IOF is leaving explosives that look like food canisters around Gaza, and the majority of those injured and hurt and maimed by those explosives fucking children? Did you know that? Did you know that H group is not a state? It was noted just so many goddamn times in the ICJ trial of South Africa versus Israel. They made a point of saying H group is not a state, and the ICJ can only deal with states. And it didn't stop Israel from being like, but H group, in response to absolutely fucking everything. Did you know that? Did you know that the U.S. Attorney General put CNN, Reuters, and 2 other news sources on notice because he said that they were publishing pro-H group content? Do you know what they were actually publishing? The death toll numbers in Gaza. Did you know that? Did you know that the U.S. is not party to the ICC or the ICJ? We're not. Did you know that? Did you know that the U.S. has something called the Hague Invasion Act? It was signed in 2008 by Bush. It's formally known as the American Service Member Protection Act, but it's informally known as the Hague Invasion Act because, as you can probably guess by the name, it says that the U.S. has to do everything within its power to keep an American service member or American elected official from being charged in the ICC, and that includes invading it. Did you know that? Did you know that in World War II, in the bloodiest war in history, which lasted 6 years, about 69 journalists were killed in the entire 6 years? Did you know that? Did you know that over 120 have been killed in 4+ months in Gaza? Did you know that? Did you know that collective punishment's a fucking war crime? Because it is. Did you know that? Jesus, what have we done to this fucking world? Anyway, that's it.
Hello again, TikTok. Is it a coincidence that this man, who is a founder of a particular state, is the father of this woman, who is married to this man. And this man is a billionaire retail mogul. Doesn't sound familiar? I'm sure you've heard of this, which is a part of this. But hey, if you're still lost, how about we mention that this man was his former power of attorney? Anyways, moving on. This man was heavily involved in an organized crime family that this man was a part of in the 1980s. And is it a coincidence that this man's business lawyer in the 1980s was this man? And this man went bye-bye a day before he was supposed to give testimony to a grand jury about 7 years of tax evasion and shell companies. Oh wait, did you not recognize that other guy? You might recognize his son, because this guy pardoned him. Now let's back up just slightly. Is it just a coincidence that this man is part of this school that's still facing 5 lawsuits? Because they allowed this guy to perpetrate there. Is it just a coincidence that this man was the assistant coach there while all of that perpetration was happening? And that this man is or hey, let's just do another one. What about this guy who was perpetrating in the modeling world? Who worked with this guy? Who allowed him to perpetrate? Oh, hey, is it just a coincidence that Abercrombie Brands is also part of L Brands? Which, if you remember... Or hey, let's just go back to the obvious. This man's former power of attorney. Should we talk about how long he got away with all of the things that he did? No, that would take too much time. We should talk about the coincidences of this man's spending habits on people's pox. A lifelong red who typically poured his money into people like... and... who are both. Coincidentally, until 2018, where he decides to register as an independent. And I have a theory about this. Would it have anything to do with that? Right, see, this is me reminding you of where his interests are, because this man has never faced any consequences for anything. This man has dropped lawsuits from Epstein victims because they were beginning to question the validity of all of his charity foundations. And coincidentally, this is something that his foundation does. Or did, because coincidentally, they stopped it last year. The timing... Just a coincidence? Hey, while you're here, I have countless individual causes linked in the link in my bio that are helping families who are being forcibly displaced from Gaza. Please gift them with assistance if you are able. And if you're still wondering how this man gets away with everything, or specifically how he has the power to get away with everything, go back to the beginning.
I know this comment means no ill intent, but I want to use it to make a point. First of all, let me say that this is definitely a thought that has crossed my mind more than once. Making the implication that Jewish people could settle somewhere else and have their own Jewish state is still problematic, and I want to explain why. First of all, seeing something like this, I imagine, and I can't speak for everyone's experience, but I imagine most Jewish people would find this offensive. Why? Because it sounds like Jewish people are almost like a pest that just need to be gotten rid of and put somewhere else so that no one else has to deal with them. If you are Jewish, and especially if you are Zionist, I want you to sit with that idea for a second and recognize how uncomfortable that makes you feel. It sounds very problematic, and at the same time, it's exactly how Israel came to be. The idea of a Jewish homeland is not a new concept. Zionism, the term itself, originated in the 19th century, but the idea of a Jewish homeland is not new. It goes back to biblical times. It goes back to the Torah, which is why it gets really, really messy in these arguments. Zionists will come and say, how can you even consider yourself to be a Jewish person if you don't support Israel? There's some contradiction happening here. Zionists say it themselves. Jewish people did not have the power to create such an entity before Israel was created. The only reason it came to be is because colonial powers at the time made that possible. Now, why would a colonial power such as Britain fight for the little guys? The Zionist movement started before World War II, yes, but it's not like anti-Semitism and Jewish hatred was a new thing in Europe. There's a history of pogroms in Eastern Europe, of ghettos, of all sorts of ways in which Jews were persecuted. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the Jewish people were not assimilating into European culture. Europe didn't want the Jewish people, and so they said, how can we get rid of them? Let your idea of the state of Israel be whatever you want it to be. The point is that when the foundations of something are rooted in hatred and bigotry, nothing good can come from that. And as much as many Jewish Zionists want to believe that the British had good intentions behind helping to establish the state of Israel, that's not the case. There's plenty of historical evidence showing that's not the case. And the ways in which this state was created have continued to cause problems to this day because they were created and rooted in violence.
Probably never heard of this book, although it was written in 1800s. It literally predicts everything that's happening right now. There is this common belief that Israelites are smarter than us. This is why they have more money, more power. They are not smarter, they are more racist. And their racism is the source of their power. Think about it, their core belief is that they are God's chosen people, that the treasures of the world are their inheritance. Now, in human history, every empire that conquered the world did it in one of two ways: armed supremacy or religion. But the Israelite empire is the only one that did not use any of these things, that chose material interests to conquer the world, aka enslaving people by financial oppression. The book also debunks the misconception that Israelites were forced to leave when the Roman Empire destroyed Jerusalem. In reality, there is proof that way before that happened, God had already chosen a decentralized system, allowed them to scatter all over the world. They were able to be in Italy when Venice, Genoa were the center of the world's economy, and as soon as that crumbled, they moved up north. England took over the shipping from Holland, they moved there. Now, I'm not going to share too much of the book because there is a lot of anti-Semitic shit. There is an Israelite empire, and the Rothschild are the kings. Their secret power was accumulative interest, debt, bonds. This is how they enslaved nations and people. And once they've done that, they moved to diplomacy, science, knowledge, media. Only when they've conquered the whole fucking world, they decided to structured entity. First, the Association of Israel.
The International Court of Justice just ordered Israel to stop their invasion of Rafah, halt all military operations, and withdraw. They also ordered Israel to open Rafah crossing for unlimited humanitarian aid and allow any observers to come into Gaza to investigate allegations of genocide. Is this going to happen? No. Israel, in response to that ruling this morning, bombed tents in Rafah. Let me show you the video. So as you can see, we're in Rafah where the tents are, and a bomb lands what seems to be right on top of the tents. And at a closer look, here's what it looks like. This is where the bomb hit. These are people. These are their tents. These are refugees. These are displaced Palestinians. And Israel just bombed them. Israel is the bad guy. For the past 7, almost 8 months, we've watched as they've murdered thousands of civilians, murdered journalists, healthcare workers, everybody, you name it. They're wiping Gaza out. And every time something good happens for Palestinian freedom, Israel uses it to punish the Palestinians. For example, the ICC is considering arresting Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. Guess what Israel did in response to that? They defunded the government of the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority. There's another one. Spain, Norway, and Ireland just recognized Palestine as a state. Israel said that they're going to build a new settlement for every new country that recognizes Palestine. These are legal settlements that are built on ethnic cleansing of the West Bank. And now we have the International Court of Justice ordering Israel out of Rafah. What does Israel do? They punish the Palestinians by bombing their tents. This will not end until we make it end. We need to speak up. We need to take action. We need to protest, boycott, raise money. Do everything you can because the time is now. Copy the link and repost this video before you go. Thank you, and free Palestine.
So I've been to Israel, and one thing that has consistently disappointed me is my fellow Jews, yes, I am Jewish, my fellow Jews' ability to see through government propaganda. I went to Israel when I was 19 on a little something called Birthright. Now, if you don't know, Birthright is a program where the Israeli government pays for American Jews to get like a free trip to Israel. It's mostly aimed at college students. I was 19, I didn't have any money, and it seemed like a good chance to, travel. However, even in college and before that, even as a teenager, I was pretty like free Palestine minded. I grew up that way. My parents felt the same way. And I kind of thought that everyone at least got why this trip would exist. That of course, if they're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars to send us over there, of course the government is getting something out of it. Of course this is propaganda. And there were 30 people on that trip. And I remember being so shocked that no one could see through what was so obviously propaganda. At times, it was so blatant, it was comical. They took us to a military graveyard, right? And they took us to the grave of a soldier that had made Aliyah. Aliyah is where non-Israeli Jews can immigrate and become citizens, and it often involves military service. This was an American Jew who had died in the Israeli military, right? His grave was covered with Americana. There was like a Pittsburgh baseball cap, a baseball, all this stuff. And our tour guide, I'm not kidding, I'm not making this up, pulls out a Bluetooth speaker and starts playing The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. And I'm like, they're trying to create an emotional response. And I think recently, it's been the same thing, right? You know, a lot of what the Israeli government's saying is so obviously propaganda to anyone that has the smallest shred of media literacy. And I am seeing people, my fellow Jews, who are educated and otherwise very progressive, liberal people, somehow just fall hook, line, and sinker for this complete and utter bullshit. It is really shocking to me, and it makes me sad. Because the thing I love about Jewish culture is that there have been so many times where we have been on the right side of history, at the front of progress and civil rights. And right now, in this instance, Israel's on the wrong side of history. The absolute wrong side of history. There's no two ways about it. And even if you don't feel it's that black and white, please try to think a little bit critically. I think it is unambiguous that the Israeli military response has been completely disproportionate. I think it is likely that the Israeli leadership and military are committing what could be defined as acts of genocide, right? And if you are pro-Israel or Jewish or Zionist and you're hearing this and these words are grating, or you want to type an angry comment, I want you to think, were you a big fan of the Iraq War, of the war in Afghanistan? Because if you weren't, you really can't support this one, because they used the exact same reasons to justify that one. Think a little bit about the kind of sources you're consuming and what might be propaganda, what might be Israeli government propaganda. I want you to think about the fact that we are passing bills right now to limit criticism of a foreign state. And I want you to think about the fact that the way people are using the word anti-Semitism now is going to be a curse upon the Jewish people for the next decade, the next 2 decades, because it is going to be the boy who cried wolf. Anti-Semitism is rising in the world. It is a massive problem right now in our culture, right? But if we are using that word constantly to refer to critiques of Israel, then when real, actual anti-Semitism rears its head, we are not going to have the language to attack it, because everyone's going to say, oh, well, they're just Zionists. They're always saying everything's anti-Semitic. And so I really think we Jewish people are shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to say, oh, it's all anti-Semitic. It's not. We are talking about geopolitics here, right? We're talking about a foreign nation. It is okay to critique aggressive, violent military action of a foreign nation. That is the most okay thing in the world.
Take a moment. If you haven't spoken up yet, but you're thinking about it, maybe you've seen the invitations, maybe you saw that Piers Morgan also changed his mind, maybe the images of Rafah have become too much, and now you're really feeling it. I think it's important that you sit with this feeling, with the weight of your decision and potential inaction. Maybe you're afraid it's too late. It isn't. Most of us were late to speak up, and there are over 1 million people right now who need every person possible advocating for them. As airstrikes continue, as aid is blocked, as children starve, as weapons shipments continue to flow. Too many lives have been lost, and many, many more are at risk. Every voice matters. And I say this not only for the sake of Palestinians, but for your own sake as well. When our actions and our beliefs are not aligned, that loss of integrity eats away at our soul. Silence is consent for this to continue, and silence is also an affront to our own humanity. Every time you have an opportunity to speak up but don't, those who benefit from harm and oppression strengthen their grip on society and also on you. So please sit with this, take a moment, and don't look away, don't numb. As many have already said, the best time to speak up was when this started, but the second best time is now.
We're having some bad acne flare-ups this morning and I don't feel like putting on makeup, so we're doing this one with a filter. Do you know how we know that those who cannot get fully on board with a free Palestine just hate Arabs and hate Muslims, that they're anti-Arab and Islamophobic? Because the West and Westerners love to pat themselves on the back for this concept of secular democracies that they think they all live in, even though a majority of them are run by Christian Zionists. They peddle this idea that they are all a part of this fight for religious freedom. They have convinced themselves and each other that, especially since 9/11, Islamic terrorism, whatever that is attempting to take over the world. It's how they got you all on board to agree and support the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan and kill literally millions of Muslims who had nothing to do with 9/11. And it's how they've convinced you that it's okay to remain silent or not fully support a free Palestine. Now, the free Palestine conversation in the West purposefully and actively removes the fact that Israel is not only killing Palestinian Muslims, but also Palestinian Christians and Jews and atheists and agnostics and so on. But even more so, they are removing the fact that Palestinians are fighting for one secular state. And just in case you need a reminder on what secular means, Western media and politicians, which results in Western public, are consistently attaching the idea of terrorism being something that is specific to Muslims. This makes it easier to believe the pro-Israel, pro-genocide crowd when they tell you that they are fighting for democracy all over the world, that they are fighting Muslim terrorists because a majority of Palestinians are Muslim. It also completely ignores the fact that Israel's entire existence and the Zionism that is necessary to uphold and maintain its existence is completely reliant on Jewish supremacy. Israelis and Zionists are fighting for a Jewish, mainly Jewish-only state in Palestine. Palestinians want a secular state where there is no religious hierarchy and everyone gets equal rights and equal opportunity to practice their faith. The actual definition of a holy land. Holy for all. Secular state versus religious extremism and supremacy. And you've got it flip-flopped. If you stand for religious freedom and secular governments, you stand on the side of Palestinians. So the next time that you meet someone who isn't on board with a free Palestine and continues to find ways to defend the existence of Israel, remind them that it's because they hate Arabs and they hate Muslims and they just want Palestinians to die.
I hear a lot of people saying that it didn't start on October 7, which is of course true, but I wanted to say that I don't think it's necessary for us to get bogged down in this chronological tit-for-tat approach about whose violence is justified and to what extent, because they'll respond with, well, a week before that rockets were fired, and then you'll say a week before that there were raids in the West Bank or a mosque was invaded, then they'll say so many years ago a guy blew himself up in a bus or whatever the case is. We can circumvent all of this if we simply recognize the concepts and realities at play here, and the rest can be inferred by necessity. Israel is a settler colony and an occupier. That means that by definition, in every moment, perpetually, Israel is exercising violence on Palestinians' right to life, freedom, and sovereignty. That also means that by extension, any responsive violence that occurs in the context of that structural violence is, by definition, a direct causal consequence of that structural violence. This is why the law recognizes an occupied people's right to armed resistance. So we don't have to get bogged down in this chronological who did what first. Did you see this article? Because again, by definition, Israel, in its essence, what it is by its being, is perpetually engaged in exercising violence on Palestinians. And so by definition, it is always, in every moment, the aggressor.
I know we're not shocked at this point when genocidal maniacs like Nikki Haley go to Israel to sign bombs like a deranged psychopath. But just because you're not shocked doesn't mean that you should allow it to become normal to you. Finish them, she wrote, which if you'll remember, she said right after October 7th, America loves Israel. Do we though? Do we? Always. What is this, your grandmother? Now, as this person mentioned in their tweet, these American paid for bombs that are in Israel right now are going to be fired in Rafah despite the ICJ telling them to halt. Then you got sicko weirdos like this that I'm only bringing him up because he is totally celebrated and accepted by mainstream media. He's one of these psychos that used to be an extremist right-winger, but then he like did the whole tap dance of I'm leaving the right wing and I'm becoming a Democrat now and I support Biden because I believe in democracy and decency. I'm never Trump. And so because he did that dance, and despite being totally evil, he's been fully accepted by our elite class. I don't get this. Why the hell is it a bad thing for Nikki Haley to finish them on these shells? I mean, doesn't everyone want Hamas to be finished? Are you tired of the gaslighting yet? Are you tired of the gaslighting yet? He knows that these are not going to get Hamas. He knows that these are the same shells that were just dropped on Palestinian innocent civilians sheltering in Rafah in the tent massacre, in which people were incinerated, people were on fire, burning alive, including a Palestinian beheaded baby, an actual one, not like the hoaxes that they perpetrated. But he's very confused, you know? He doesn't know why. But we know why. We know why. Your government does not work for you.
Israel's massacre in Rafah this past weekend, which killed 45 displaced Palestinians in a tent camp, burned people alive, and decapitated small children, is not a red line for Joe Biden. The Biden administration has urged Israel to investigate itself for its own crimes. The same Israel that for decades has investigated itself and found that they did nothing wrong. Kind of like in 2015 when they bombed 4 small children on a beach in Gaza, said that it was a tragic accident, and then found that they did nothing wrong. A convenient reminder that none of this started on October 7th. And while the Biden administration says that Israel needs to work to protect civilians, they know as well as you and I know, Israel hasn't been doing that once throughout this entire genocide. And as pointed out by Euromed Human Rights Monitor, Israel has been killing civilians with US-made weapons. Not only has Israel not been working to protect civilians, they have been targeting civilians. These are headlines from just the last month and a half. Just today, an Israeli official said that the genocide will go on for at least another 7 months. More than 115,000 people have been killed or maimed in Gaza. So I don't know what Joe Biden's red line is, but I do know that he can stop this. No more weapons to Israel.
You know how I felt when I saw this image, this AI created image? I felt sorry for the families of the 134 Palestinian journalists in Gaza who were killed by Israel. I felt sorry for the mother who had to carry her son to his grave. I felt sorry for Bayan from Gaza who saw her own brother getting executed in front of her. I felt sorry for all of these lives who sacrificed themselves in order to convey the images that they see on the ground. 134 Palestinian journalists lost their lives, and we ended up with this mutation. And when you zoom in, nothing here makes sense. Like this cargo, and what is this? In an icy mountain background? You know what this photo does? It gives a space to lazy activism, to people who never wanted to actually talk about the cause or never even want to put in the energy or don't want to be controversial. You know, all of these people, it gives them the space to say, here, you wanted me to talk about it? Here, I post about it. Now shut up, leave me alone. Because I found 2 of my mutuals who have been beating around the bushes about the cause, like saying like random shy stuff like in their random content, posted this morning, and I was like, that's interesting, because we don't have shortage of these stories. We have no shortage of footage. This is the first time that we see a genocide being live streamed on our phones, and now we're using AI generated image. Do you see how disgraceful it is to the lives of the 134 Palestinians journalists who lost their lives? I don't know what's going on. And I agree that it is good for some people to see this and feel attached to the cause, that if it was their first time to be exposed to this. But those who have been seeing footage for 8 months straight, and now they're moved, now they're posting this, it's really, really disgraceful. If you are one of those and posted this photo today, log out. Please log out.
Aloha mai kako. This is a global call to action. You do not need to be a resident of Hawaii to participate in this. Please watch this video in its entirety, do the actionable things, and please interact with this video, like, comment, respond to other comments, repost, and share. We are asking everyone to demand nations to withdraw from RIMPAC. If you don't know what RIMPAC is, it stands for Rim of the Pacific. In Hawaii this summer, Israel will participate alongside 28 additional countries in the world's largest military exercise. Hosted by the US Navy, RIMPAC has exploited the Pacific for 53 years for its own imperialist interests. Every 2 years, militaries at RIMPAC test missiles, drones, artillery, and battleships, exchange tactics, best practices, and latest technologies, conduct trainings and simulations, and seek to demonstrate their military dominance to the rest of the world. Israel has participated in RIMPAC exercises since 2018, strengthening its genocidal capabilities through US naval trainings and tactics. Amidst its genocide in Gaza, Israel resists accountability and seeks to enact further harm onto Palestinians under the protection of the US military. The impacts of RIMPAC are far-reaching. Exercises devastate local ecosystems and land, the influx of military personnel increases rates of sexualized violence against women and queer and trans people, and militarization undermines indigenous sovereignty throughout the Pacific. RIMPAC has always been resisted by indigenous communities, including in Hawaii and the Philippines. Any country who attends RIMPAC 2024 will be learning from Israel's genocidal military operations against Palestinians and bolstering and enabling Israel to further harm Palestinians. So this is what we can do. We can demand world leaders to withdraw from RIMPAC now. You can find the link to the forum in the clickable thing in my bio. So you go to my tree of links and then you go to the one highlighted right down there, withdraw from RIMPAC 2024, sign open letter to participating countries. When you open the form, you can fill out the information and you can also find a sample of the open letter right over here, which will look something like this and this. Please fill out that form. It takes less than 3 minutes of your time, and please share it to your friends, to your family, to your community, and share this video too. A'ole RIMPAC, A'ole genocide, cancel RIMPAC, stop the genocide, and Israel is not welcome in Hawaii.
The world is a place full of horror, but it's also a place full of beauty, full of compassion. It is important for us to be able to identify the horror, because it gives us the weapons to be able to mitigate it. Kindness and compassion may be constructs. They're all the more beautiful because they are constructs, because we have to work hard to be able to make them happen. And damn, I'm seeing that every day. In the middle of all of these images of horror, I see images of kindness, of empathy, of a refusal to accept the world as it is. And for me, that is worth being hopeful for. I remind you again, here we are, fighting against ridiculous odds. People who have no leverage, people who have no power. And yet, day by day, we push things a little bit farther. Potentially not fast enough, potentially not conclusively. But we still do it. And if that's not beauty enough to counter the horror, I don't know what is.
I truly believe that Palestine is a moral litmus test, that one's position on Palestine is indicative sense of what global liberation is all about. So that when we support Palestine, we're not saying that we only support Palestine. We're saying that we support struggles for freedom and liberation all over the world. And precisely because of the tenacity of the Palestinian people, precisely because they have refused to give up since 1948, since 1967. When I visited Palestine in 2011, I talked to a man who was a storekeeper, and he said to me, as long as there is a single olive tree left in Palestine, we will fight for the liberation of our people. The reason why we point to Palestine as indicative of struggles for liberation all over the world. Black people have been very much inspired by the struggle in Palestine. And we know that if we manage to defeat Zionism, we will be able to defeat racism everywhere.
I'm Selena Al-Shahabi with Students for Justice in Palestine.
And I'm Paul Pumphrey with Friends of the Congo.
And we are here, amongst other coalitions all around the world, fighting against Glencore's annual meeting in Switzerland right now.
The UN Voter Report was stated that between 1996 to 2006, that over 6 million Congolese, many of them being children below the age of 5, as well as women, were killed inside the Congo. And why? because that region of the Congo, the eastern part of the Congo, happens to be filthy rich with minerals that large corporations wanted access to, and they didn't want to pay companies, mining companies in places like Australia, because they knew that Australia would charge them the going rate. So they decided to finance so-called rebels and army members from the government of Rwanda to go across the border and to clear those communities that were living on top of these precious minerals.
We are here to hold every institution in the United States and across the world accountable. I'm a Georgetown student, and I'm here to also hold Georgetown University accountable for what is going on in the Congo and what is going on in Palestine.
This injustice is not just injustice against Palestinian people and Congolese people, it's also injustice against the people right here in the United States, because they're using our tax dollars to help these greedy corporations rob and plunder other people's lands and act as if their resources don't belong to them. That in fact, that their corporations feel that they have the power to do what they want to do, and they're using our tax dollars to use the U.S. military to back them up as they plunder the wealth throughout Africa, throughout the Middle East, and throughout the world.
All of our struggles are united, and when they try to divide us and when they try to use divide and conquer methods which have been used for years, we need to remember that all of our struggles against oppression are united. All eyes on Rafah, but also all eyes on Congo and all eyes on everywhere else around the world where innocent children are being slaughtered, where people are being displaced.
We must understand that what is going on is straight up robbery, and that the support of the U.S. government, both political parties, as I like to refer to them as Twilly-D and Twilly-Dum, both political parties are in major support of these corporations, not even just U.S. corporations, because Glencore is a corporation that's in Switzerland. But yet, even though it's in Switzerland, and today happens to be the day they're having their international meeting in Switzerland, this is one of the reasons why we chose to speak out against them today. That these companies are, for instance, Glencore is the largest mining company that mines coal in the world today. Now you have these fancy meetings about the environment where you have countries make all kinds of little commitments, but then you turn around and you see that these countries are using companies like Glencore to continue to produce coal, which everyone knows is a major polluter. And in fact, as we look at the weather reports in just this past couple of weeks of how many severe storms are right here in the United States, it's coming from the climate change. It's coming from the coal being burned by companies like Glencore. And rather than the United States, who gives a lot of lip service about the environment, stand up and say no more to these companies, no, they aid and abet them. They help these companies go into places like the Congo and steal and rob not just coal, but looking at things like electric companies and batteries and how they're now using the minerals out of the Congo for that, looking at the coltan, and then turning around, because you got the cobalt for the batteries and you got the coltan for the electronics, and they're using children, child labor, because in fact, their goal is to maximize as much money as possible for themselves at the expense of human lives. And we have to say enough is enough, and it must be brought to an end. And we must hold our government responsible for this, because the U.S. government in particular has been the biggest military power that has endorsed and supported and aided and abetted the forces that have been killing the people inside the Congo and using the children to do mining and such things as cobalt, which is extremely poisonous to these children and to many of the women who, in an effort of trying to support their families, are being poisoned as they try to dig out the cobalt.